This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
7:35 on a Monday morning. I'm Rex Nelson sitting in for Alice Stewart. Alice on the road. She will be back tomorrow. Thank you for spending your morning with us here on Fox News Radio 96.5 FM, The Voice in Little Rock. Be careful on that drive in to work. And we are honored to have the congressman from the 1st Congressional District of Arkansas, Rick Crawford, on with us. Not only because I like him, but Jessica, he's got a radio background. You know, he did agricultural radio before he was in Congress. So this guy could do this in his sleep. He may be asleep. Congressman, thanks for joining us early on a Monday morning.
Hey, good to be with you.
I always appreciate it. Of course, much of the news focus continues on the Middle East, on Islamic extremists, on ISIS. We saw another one of those horrible beheadings, this time of a British citizen, over the weekend. We had seen the president do a nationally televised address last week. Your sense, the administration, the president, are we now headed down the right road, or are we doing enough? Are we doing anything?
Well, it's kind of hard to see what road we are heading down. I mean, we're hearing mixed messages from the administration and key members of his cabinet. We're getting mixed messages from Great Britain. A week ago, it seemed that David Cameron was all in. I mean, he really recognized and understood, talked tough. Now we see a British national that was beheaded, and he seems to have softened his position to a certain degree. I think a lot of that may be driven by the Scotland vote that's coming up this week, and he just doesn't want to rock the boat in advance of that very critical vote. So, I mean, there's a lot of global politics playing out here. But, I mean, bottom line, ISIS is a huge threat not only to the region, it's certainly a threat to the United States and our interests, and I think it's going to require a little more action than hanging out on the golf course on a Sunday afternoon.
So even though the president did come and address the nation, you didn't hear much concrete in that. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, I mean, we're talking about the notion that we're going to arm moderate Syrian rebels. Well, my position is and continues to be that any moderate elements in Syria have either been killed or probably fled. So what shooting has taken place there, you're going to have to be very, very careful in dealing with arming any element in Syria, because now we've seen over the weekend where there's been a ceasefire negotiated between the Syrian rebels and ISIS. So is that are we seeing that now because now ISIS is working with folks that we hope to ally with to fight them, and they say, hey, we got a better deal, we'll do this for you. It's like I said, it's going to be very, very difficult to identify a reliable element that we can work with there and not have to worry about having our own ammunition and weapons used against us. So it's a very scary scenario. However, we just can't allow ISIS to go unchecked in the region or anywhere else.
Big picture back in Congress, where we're, of course, in an election year. We're in that stretch run to Election Day, and so I guess it is pretty safe to say we're not going to see much done in the United States Congress between now and the end of the year, correct?
Well, what you'll see this week is a couple of things. One is a continuing resolution, to fund the government. That's critical, but this issue of ISIS is kind of woven into it because the president has specifically asked for authorization, not funding, but authorization to arm Syrian rebels. And now the question is that a good move because of what's taken place over the weekend with respect to this ceasefire negotiation between ISIS and Syrian rebels? So, while that sounded good on Wednesday, it may not be the best move for the president or for Congress to be aligned with an element that we don't know enough about, and that may actually be working with ISIS. And so that negotiation with ISIS and this element, it may be in advance of the potential plan that the president laid out on Wednesday, or a hint of a plan. Wasn't really a plan, but at least kind of an idea of what he had in mind.
Exactly. I mentioned, and I've got to hit on it before I let you go, I mentioned your agricultural background, and of course you represent the 1st Congressional District of Arkansas, which is one of the breadbaskets of American agriculture. I had the good fortune of spending a part of a day last week on a combine out at Scott, which was a lot of fun, harvesting corn, the harvest, the rice harvest, others all full speed in your district right now. I know prices on corn certainly are way down from where they were 2 years ago, but it looks like after a relatively wet summer that our yields are going to be very, very good for all crops. Is that the sense you're getting over in your district?
Yes. In fact, I was down in Lake Village a week before last, and there was an individual down there. He was gathering corn and at a rate of about, he said, almost 245 bushels an acre. Holy cow. You know, Arkansas had the highest yields in the nation last year. On average, we were somewhere near 200, around 190, I believe, bushels per acre. And, you know, the farm policy has largely been driven of late in the last decade or so by Midwestern interests and corn driving that interest. And they kind of always sort of scoffed at Southerners' ability to compete with them where corn is concerned. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen since 2007, but an acceleration of that really since 2009, is that not only can we compete, we've got the acres, we've got the irrigation, we've got the disease package on Southern corn varieties, and we've got the yields that are just through the roof compared to places like Iowa and Illinois and Indiana. So yes, we can compete, so be careful what you wish for. You might get it. Yeah,
and of course, we are by far the nation's leading rice-growing state. Seems to me rice yields are good, too. Are you hearing that?
I am. In fact, you know, we had some concerns about a fairly cool summer. Were we going to get the heat units we needed to make a good crop? I was talking with a gentleman yesterday in church, and he said their yields were not only were they getting good dry yields, but it was milling well. They were happy about that, and probably on pace for a record for some. And I think our rice crop's looking pretty good in spite of a fairly cool summer, relatively cool summer. The issue now is going to be cotton, and see how that shakes out, because obviously, you know, not getting the heat units they needed when they needed could complicate our cotton crop.
Real quickly before I let you go, Congressman, we've seen a lot of coverage of this very unfortunate bankruptcy of Turner Grain Merchandising over at Brinkley, losses perhaps in the tens of millions of dollars. I don't guess there's anything the federal government can do about that, right?
Well, to the extent that we could, we requested an extension from USDA on some FSA loans. We asked for 180. The delegation all signed off on it. We got 60 days. That's a little bit of help. We may be able to revisit that at the end of the 60-day period and see if we can't get a further extension. Right now, that seems to be the only course of action while the legal arguments and legal cases play out. What we need to do, though, after that's done is look back and say, what could have been done? Is this something that the state can help regulate? Turner Grain is not a CFTC registrant, so their level of oversight is fairly limited. So, should there be a bond issued to people who deal in this type of brokering? Probably so. It could be a state issue. Probably more than likely it would be a state issue. I'm hesitant to bring the federal government in at any level on anything, because typically what the federal government does is overdo. And so I think we need to see what's the best course of action once the dust settles on this and the legal battles have taken place. We'll be in a better position to know just exactly what happened. But certainly as you know, there's going to be considerable legal fallout over this.
Exactly. Congressman, thank you so much. I know you've got a busy week ahead. I appreciate you spending part of your Monday morning with us.
You bet. Glad to do it. Thanks, Rex.
Congressman Rick Crawford from the 1st Congressional District of Arkansas. More coming your way. David Goins from KARK TV Channel 4 coming up next, so stay tuned. I'm Rex Nelson sitting in for Alice Stewart here on the Alice Stewart Show. This segment of the Alice Stewart Show brought to you by Era Plumbing. For all of your household or business plumbing needs, call Era Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER. That's 1-866-PLUMBER, or you can go online to eraplumbing.net.